Left for dead by the galaxy, the Colossal Starship found a human. Part 1. Dew floated in the darkness of space and counted his breaths. Each one used a little more of his oxygen. Each one brought him closer to the end. His emergency suit had enough air for maybe 6 more hours. His rescue beacon had been sending signals for 8 days now. No one had answered. No one would answer. He was too far from any trade route, too deep in unclaimed space where no government sent patrol ships and no company thought the rescue was worth the fuel cost. He was going to die out here, alone among the stars. The wreckage of his salvage ship drifted around him in slow, lazy circles. Pieces of metal that had been his home for 3 years now floated past like dead leaves on a pond. The pirate attack had lasted only 4 minutes. 4 minutes to destroy everything he had built. 4 minutes to leave him floating in nothing with only a suit and a beacon and the cold light of distant stars. Dew had stopped feeling afraid 2 days ago. Fear takes energy, and he had learned to save his energy for things that mattered. Now he just felt tired and a little sad. He thought about his mother back on the colony world of Nu. He thought about his old crew captain, Hana, who had taught him everything about salvage work before she retired. He wondered if anyone would tell them what happened to him, or if he would simply disappear from the universe like he had never existed at all. He closed his eyes and let himself drift. Something changed. Dew did not notice it at first. It was just a feeling, like when you know someone is watching you even though you cannot see them. He opened his eyes and looked around at the same field of debris, the same distant stars, the same empty black nothing. But the stars on one side were gone. He turned his body slowly, using tiny bursts from his suit thrusters. A shadow had appeared in space. Not a shadow exactly, but an absence of light so large that his mind struggled to understand it. Something was blocking the stars, and whatever it was enormous. Dew watched as the shape grew closer. Lights began to appear on its surface, small and scattered, like the last candles in a house where most of the rooms have gone dark. The lights let him see the outline of the thing, and what he saw made his heart beat faster for the first time in days. It was a ship, a starship of impossible size. Dew had worked salvage for 12 years. He had seen battleships and cargo haulers and luxury vessels the size of small cities. He had crawled through wrecks that were older than human space travel, but he had never seen anything like this. This ship was not measured in meters or even kilometers. It was measured in mountains. It was measured in horizons. It was so large that it had its own sense of gravity, and Dew felt himself slowly being pulled toward it. The ship was ancient. He could see that even from this distance. Its hull was with damage from countless impacts. Whole sections looked dark and dead. It moved slowly, patiently, like an old man walking through a park, and it was coming straight toward him. Dew should have been afraid. A ship this size, this old, this unknown could be anything. It could be a trap. It could be a tomb. It could be something so alien that his human mind could not even begin to understand it. But he was going to die anyway. At least this was interesting. The ship stopped when it was close enough that Dew could see details on its hull. Strange patterns that might have been writing. Ports and openings that did not match any design he knew. And then, directly in front of him, the hull began to move. It did not open like a door or a docking bay. It was more like the ship was creating an opening just for him, pulling its own metal apart to make a space. A soft golden light spilled out from inside. Dew felt the gravity pull increase slightly, gently, like a hand reaching out to guide him. He let himself be pulled. The opening was just large enough for him to pass through. Inside, he found himself in a corridor that stretched away into darkness in both directions. The walls were made of something that looked like metal but felt wrong somehow, too smooth, too warm. The golden light came from strips along the ceiling that flickered and pulsed in uneven patterns. The opening behind him closed. Dew was inside the ancient ship now, cut off from space, cut off from the wreckage of his old life. He checked his suit readings. The air outside was breathable, the temperature was comfortable, the pressure was normal. He removed his helmet. The air tasted old but clean, like a room that had been sealed for a very long time but had been kept carefully preserved. Du took a deep breath and felt his body relax in ways he had not allowed it to relax for 8 days. The lights on the ceiling flickered again. This time Du noticed a pattern. 3 short pulses, then 2 long ones, then 3 short again. It repeated twice, then stopped. Du watched the lights. He did not know what the pattern meant, but he recognized an attempt at communication when he saw one. Whatever controlled this ship, whatever mind or machine or ancient system still ran through its corridors, it was trying to talk to him. He reached out and touched the wall. It was warm under his fingers, almost like touching skin. He tapped the wall 3 times slowly, then twice, then 3 times again, copying the pattern the lights had shown. The entire ship shuddered. It was not a violent movement. It was more like a deep breath or a sigh, or the way a sleeping animal shifts when it begins to wake. The lights along the ceiling grew brighter. More lights appeared in the distance, leading down the corridor like a path. Somewhere deep inside the ship, something very old began to wake up. Du stood in the corridor of the ancient vessel and felt small and tired and very much alone. But he was also alive when he should have been dead. This impossible ship had come for him when no one else would. Maybe it was luck. Maybe it was something else. He picked up his helmet, tucked it under his arm, and began to walk toward the distant lights. He did not know where he was going or what he would find. He only knew that he was not dead yet, and as long as he was alive, he would keep moving forward. Behind him, in the walls and the floors and the vast unknowable systems of the ancient ship, something watched him go. It had been alone for a very long time. It had been abandoned by every species that found it. They had all run away eventually. They had all given up. But this small creature, this human, had not run. It had answered the lights. It had touched the wall with something that felt almost like gentleness. The ship did not know what to make of this. But for the first time in 800,000 years, it wanted to find out. Left for dead by the galaxy, the Colossal Starship found a human. Part 2. Du had been living inside the ancient ship for 9 days now. He had explored maybe 1% of it. The ship was not just large, it was endless. He had found a small room with something that worked like a bed. The surface was too hard and shaped wrong for a human body, but Du had slept in worse places. He had found water coming from a pipe that activated when he touched certain panels on the wall. The water tasted strange, slightly metallic, but it did not make him sick. He had found areas where the air was warm and areas where it was cold, and he had learned to read the ship's patterns well enough to know which sections were safe. His emergency rations were running low. He had maybe 5 days of food left. After that, he would have to hope the ship could provide something he could eat, or he would starve inside the belly of this ancient beast. But Du did not think about that much. He was too busy trying to understand the ship. Every day, the ship tried to talk to him. It used lights, flashing in complex patterns of mathematics that Du could not follow. It used sounds, deep vibrations that hummed through the floors and walls. Once, it tried something that felt like a touch inside his mind, a pressure behind his eyes that made his head hurt for hours afterward. Du could not understand any of it. The ship's language was too alien, too old, too far beyond anything humans had ever encountered. It was like trying to have a conversation with a creature that thought in colors and sounds that human senses could not perceive. But Du did not give up. He had never been good at giving up. He talked to the ship instead, out loud in simple words, as if he was speaking to a child or a frightened animal. He told the ship about his day, about what he had found in the corridors, about how he was feeling. He knew the ship probably could not understand his words any more than he could understand its lights, but it seemed important to keep trying. On the 10th day, Du found a section of the ship that was damaged. A corridor had collapsed somehow, long ago, and energy leaked from broken conduits in the walls. The energy was visible as a pale blue light that crackled and sparked. It looked dangerous. It looked like something he should avoid. Du studied it for a long time. He had been a salvage engineer for 12 years. He understood broken systems. He understood how to fix things that other people had given up on. He went back to his small room and gathered the few tools he had brought in his emergency kit. Then he returned to the damaged section and began to work. The repair took 7 hours. Du had to figure out how the alien systems worked just by looking at them, touching them, testing different connections. He burned his fingers twice on conduits that were hotter than he expected. He shocked himself once badly enough to knock him off his feet. But he kept working, kept trying, kept refusing to accept that the damage was beyond his ability to fix. When he finally connected the last broken conduit, the blue sparking stopped. The lights in that section of corridor, which had been dark, flickered on and stayed on. Du sat on the floor, exhausted and covered in strange alien fluids, and felt something he had not felt in a long time. He felt proud. The ship felt something too. Deep in its ancient systems, in the fractured consciousness that had been alone for 847,000 years, something changed. The ship had been hurt for so long that it had forgotten what healing felt like. Now a small wound, one tiny piece of damage among millions, was repaired, not by the ship's own failing systems, not by the advanced technology of some elder race, but by a small, fragile creature with simple tools and stubborn determination. The ship did not understand how Du had done it. The creatures called had studied the ship for decades with equipment far beyond human technology. They had declared its damage impossible to repair. They had given up and left. But this human, with nothing but basic tools and his own 2 hands, had succeeded where they had failed. The ship began to watch Du more carefully. Over the next few days, the ship learned to communicate in simpler ways. When Du shivered from cold, the ship warmed the air around him. When he got lost in the endless corridors, lights would appear to guide him back to familiar areas. When he was thirsty, water would begin to flow before he even reached for the panels. Du noticed these changes. He did not understand how the ship knew what he needed, but he was grateful. He thanked the ship out loud every time it helped him. He patted the walls gently when he passed through doorways. He treated the ancient vessel not like a machine, but like a living thing that was trying its best to take care of him. No other creature had ever done this. They had tried to give orders and become angry when the ship did not obey. The collective had tried to force their way into the ship's consciousness and had gone insane from the contact. They had treated the ship like a puzzle to be solved, a specimen to be studied, a thing without feelings or awareness. But Du talked to the ship. He thanked it. He apologized when he accidentally damaged something during his repairs. He said good morning when he woke up and good night before he slept. He acted as if the ship was a friend, not a tool. On the 15th day, the ship showed Du something it had never shown anyone else. A wall opened into a room Du had never found before. Inside, the walls were covered with images. Not pictures exactly, but recordings that moved like memories. Du saw alien creatures he had never imagined, saw ships of impossible design, saw worlds being built and worlds being destroyed. He saw the history of the ship playing out before him. And he saw the ship's creators. They were tall and thin, with too many joints in their limbs and eyes that reflected light like mirrors. They moved with grace and purpose. They looked kind. And in every image they were dying. Their sun was collapsing, their world was ending, and they were building this ship to preserve something of themselves. They called the ship their last hope. Du watched the recordings for hours. He saw them send the ship out into the universe to find someone worthy of their legacy. He saw the ship travel for hundreds of thousands of years. He saw it approach other species, try to communicate and be rejected again and again. Feared, attacked, abandoned. When the recordings ended, Du stood in silence for a long moment. Then he placed his hand on the wall, gently, the way he might touch the shoulder of someone who was grieving. "I am sorry," he said. "I am so sorry you have been alone for so long. That must have been terrible." The ship had received many things from the species it encountered: fear, greed, scientific curiosity, hostility, but no one had ever given it sympathy. No one had ever acknowledged that it might be capable of loneliness or pain. The lights in the room dimmed until they were almost the color of a sunset. The temperature grew warmer. The walls seemed to curve inward slightly, as if the room itself was trying to embrace the small human standing within it. Du smiled and patted the wall again. "It is going to be okay," he said. "You are not alone anymore. I am here now. We will figure this out together." He did not know if the ship understood his words, but somehow he felt certain that it understood his meaning. And somewhere in the vast and ancient systems of the vessel, a feeling took root that had been absent for almost 1,000,000 years. Hope. Left for dead by the galaxy, the Colossal Starship found a human. Part 3. 6 weeks had passed since Du first entered the ancient ship. In that time, he had repaired 43 separate systems using nothing but his basic tools and his stubborn refusal to accept that anything was truly broken beyond repair. The ship was changing. It was not just the repairs, though those had helped. It was something deeper, something harder to explain. The ship was waking up, not because its systems were being forced to activate, but because it wanted to wake up. For the first time in hundreds of thousands of years, the ancient vessel had a reason to live. Du noticed the changes in small ways at first. The lights grew brighter and steadier. The air became fresher, easier to breathe. The strange food that the ship had started producing for him, a kind of thick paste that tasted like nothing he had ever eaten before, became more pleasant each day. It was as if the ship was learning what humans needed and trying harder to provide it. Then the bigger changes began. One morning, Du woke to find a new doorway in his small room. It had not been there when he went to sleep. He walked through it and found himself in a space that took his breath away. It was a garden, or something like a garden. Plants he had never seen grew from containers built into the walls and floor. Small lights moved through the air like fireflies, tending to the plants, checking their health, keeping them alive. The garden was huge, stretching away into the distance, and Du realized that this was not something the ship had created for him. This was something the ship had been keeping alive, all by itself, for almost 1,000,000 years. A tiny piece of the world they had come from. Du walked through the garden in silence. He touched the strange plants gently, careful not to damage them. Some of them seemed to react to his presence, turning toward him like they were curious about this new visitor. When he reached the center of the garden, he found a pool of clear water. He knelt beside it and looked at his reflection. He looked older than he remembered, tired, but there was something else in his eyes now, something he had not seen in a long time. He looked like a person who had found a purpose. The ship spoke to him then, not in words exactly, but in feelings and images that pressed against his mind. It was gentler now than it had been at first. The ship had learned to communicate without causing him pain. It showed him what it was feeling. Gratitude, deep and overwhelming gratitude. Du smiled and placed his hand in the water. "Thank you for showing me this place," he said. "It is beautiful." The ship showed him more. It showed him its engines, vast and powerful, capable of folding space itself to travel distances that would take other ships thousands of years. It showed him its weapons, terrible things that could crack planets open like eggs. It showed him its shields, barriers so strong that nothing in the modern galaxy could pierce them. It showed him its factories, systems that could build entire fleets from raw materials. The ship was not just large. It was powerful beyond anything Du could have imagined. They had built their final creation to survive anything the universe could throw at it. And now, after sleeping for so long, that creation was ready to wake up fully. Du felt a chill run down his spine. This much power was dangerous. In the wrong hands, this ship could conquer the galaxy. It could destroy civilizations. It could reshape the universe itself. But then the ship showed him one more thing. It showed him what it wanted. Not conquest, not destruction, not power. The ship wanted what it had always wanted, what they had built it to find. It wanted a family. They had known they were dying. They had accepted that their species would end. But they had hoped that their legacy could continue, that their knowledge and their values and their way of seeing the universe could be passed on to someone else. They had built this ship to find worthy successors, not worthy in terms of power or intelligence, but worthy in terms of heart. The ship had searched for 800,000 years and found nothing but fear and greed. Every species wanted to use the ship or destroy it. No one wanted to understand it. No one wanted to be its family. Until now. Du stood in the garden of the ancient ship and felt tears running down his face. He did not know why he was crying. He only knew that he understood something important. This vast and powerful vessel, this creation of a lost civilization, this being that could reshape the galaxy if it chose to, was just lonely. It was just a child that had lost its parents and been wandering the universe alone, looking for someone to love. He wiped his eyes and looked up at the ceiling, at the lights that moved through the garden, at the walls that had opened to show him this secret place. "I understand," he said. "I know what you are looking for, and I will help you find it if I can, but I need you to promise me something first." The ship waited, curious, hopeful. "All this power," Du said. "All these weapons and shields and engines. Promise me you will never use them to hurt innocent people. Promise me that if I help you, we will use this power to help, not to harm." The ship considered this request. Its systems processed the meaning behind the words. In its long existence, many had made demands of it. The had demanded obedience. The had demanded knowledge. The had demanded access to its consciousness. But no one had ever asked it to be good. The ship made its promise. It sent the feeling directly into Du's mind, clear and certain and binding. It would not harm innocent people. It would use its power to help, not to destroy. It gave this promise freely, not because Du had the power to force it, but because Du had asked with kindness and respect. Du nodded and smiled. "Then we have a deal. Now I think you should show me how to fly this thing. We have a whole galaxy to explore." The ship's lights pulsed with something that felt almost like joy. But before Du could take another step, an alarm sounded through the corridors. Not a loud, panicked alarm, but a low, steady warning. Something was approaching. Du ran to the nearest wall panel and touched it. The ship showed him what its sensors had detected. Ships, many ships, a fleet of 40 vessels, bristling with weapons, approaching from the direction of space. The ship showed him more information. These ships had been tracking the ancient vessel for decades, waiting for it to drift into territory where they could claim it. They wanted the ship for its weapons. They wanted to use it to conquer their enemies. And they were prepared to destroy anything that stood in their way. Du stared at the images of the approaching fleet. 40 warships, armed and ready for battle. He was one human with no weapons, no allies, and no way to fight back. But he was not alone. He had the ancient ship, and he had made a promise to protect it. The ship asked him what they should do. It could destroy the fleet easily. Its weapons were beyond anything they possessed. One shot would be enough. Du shook his head. "No," he said. "We promise not to harm innocent people. Those are soldiers, but they are still people. We need to find another way." The ship did not understand. They were a threat. The logical response was elimination, but it had made a promise and it trusted Du. It waited to see what the human would do next. Du took a deep breath and walked toward the section of the ship that held the communication systems. He did not know if he could talk his way out of this situation. He did not know if words could stop a fleet of warships. But he was going to try, because that was what humans did. They tried. Left for dead by the galaxy, the Colossal Starship found a human. Part 4. Commander stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched the ancient ship grow larger in the viewing screens. She had waited 30 years for this moment. 30 years of tracking, 30 years of planning, 30 years of watching the derelict vessel drift slowly toward space. Now it was finally within reach. The Weren species, tall and sharp and built for war, had 4 arms and 2 sets of eyes, 1 pair for close vision and 1 for distance. Her exoskeleton was from 100 battles. She had earned her position through blood and victory, and she intended to earn her place in history by claiming the greatest prize the galaxy had ever known. All ships take position around the target, she commanded. Prepare cutting beams. We will carve an entrance if we must. Her officers obeyed instantly. 40 warships moved into a sphere around the ancient vessel, their weapons aimed at its hull. Had studied every report ever written about this ship. She knew that they had tried to study it and failed. She knew that they had tried to bond with it and gone insane. She knew that every species that encountered this vessel had eventually given up. But they did not give up. They took what they wanted. Open a channel, said. Broadcast on all frequencies. She expected no response. Every report said the ship was dead, its systems silent, its corridors empty. But protocol demanded that she offer the chance to surrender before she began the assault. Attention, unidentified vessel, she said in the standard galactic language. You have drifted into territorial claims. Surrender your ship for inspection and study, or you will be destroyed. You have 1 minute to comply. She waited, counting the seconds, already planning where her soldiers would cut through the hull first. Then a voice came through the communication system, and 4 arms went still with shock. Hello, said a calm male voice. My name is Dew. I am a human engineer. This ship is not a derelict and it is not available for inspection. Please leave peacefully. Stared at her communication officer. A human. There is a human on board. Humans were a minor species in galactic terms. They had only been traveling between stars for a few centuries. They had no great fleet, no powerful weapons, no claim to ancient knowledge or superior technology. They were known mainly for their strange stubbornness and their tendency to survive in situations where they should have died. How did a human get aboard that ship? Demanded. No one had an answer. She activated the communication channel again. Human, you are in no position to make demands. That ship is property of the Dominion. If you do not surrender immediately, we will cut through the hull and take what we want. You will die in the process. The human's voice came back, still calm, still polite. I understand that you believe you have power here, but I must tell you that you are wrong. This ship is awake now. If you attack, you will not survive. I am asking you, please, to leave peacefully. No one needs to die today. Laughed. It was a harsh sound like metal scraping against metal. The ship is awake. That derelict has been dead for thousands of years. You are bluffing, human. All ships begin cutting operations. Extract the human for questioning. The first ship fired its cutting beam, a concentrated line of energy designed to slice through starship hulls like a hot blade through soft meat. The beam struck the ancient vessel's hull and simply stopped. It did not bounce away or scatter or reflect. It just ended, absorbed into the ship's surface like water soaking into sand. Laughter died in her throat. Increase power, she ordered. All ships fire. 40 warships unleashed their weapons at once. Cutting beams, missiles, plasma cannons, energy lances. Every weapon the possessed struck the ancient ship in a storm of destruction that would have torn any normal vessel into fragments. When the light cleared, the ancient ship hung in space, completely undamaged. Its shields had not even flickered. And then the ship responded. A single beam of golden light lanced out from somewhere deep within the ancient vessel. It struck flagship with surgical precision. Not the engines, not the bridge, not the weapons. It struck the power conduits that connected all of those systems together. In an instant, every weapon on ship went dead. Every engine shut down. Every door locked in place. The flagship was now a floating box of metal, completely helpless. Before could give another order, 39 more beams lanced out. Each one struck a different ship. Each one disabled it completely without killing anyone aboard. In less than 10 seconds, the entire fleet had been rendered powerless. Stood on her darkened bridge, emergency lights casting red shadows across her face, and felt something she had not felt in decades. Fear. The human's voice came through again. The communication system still worked somehow. The ancient ship had left them that. I told you the ship was awake, Du said. I told you that you would not survive if you attacked. But I did not want anyone to die, so I asked the ship to disable your weapons instead of destroying your fleet. Please believe me when I say that it could have killed all of you. It chose not to. Gripped the railing of her command platform so hard that the metal bent under her claws. What do you want, human? I want to tell you a story, Du said. Will you listen? Had no choice. She could not fight, she could not run. She could only listen as the human began to speak. He told her about the ancient species that built the ship. He told her about their dying sun and their final hope. He told her about the ship's long journey through the universe, searching for a family, being rejected by every species it met. He told her about the who studied it and left, about the who tried to control it and failed, about the themselves, who had tried to capture it once before and been driven away. He told her about how he had been floating in space, dying alone, when the ship found him and brought him inside. He told her about how he had repaired its systems, not with advanced technology but with patience and simple tools. He told her about how he had talked to the ship, thanked it, treated it with kindness. And he told her about the promise they had made to each other. This ship has the power to conquer the galaxy, Du said. It has weapons that could crack you open like an egg, but it promised me that it would never harm innocent people. It promised to use its power to help, not to hurt, and I am asking you to believe in that promise. Listened in silence. Her officers listened. Her soldiers, trapped in their locked rooms throughout the disabled ship, listened. Why are you telling me this? Finally asked. Because I want you to understand, Du said. Every species that encountered this ship saw it as a tool or a weapon or a threat. No one ever saw it as what it truly is, a survivor, a child looking for a home, something that has been alone and afraid for almost 1,000,000 years. He paused. You could have been its family too. Any of you could have been, but you chose fear and greed instead. Said nothing. There was nothing to say. I am going to broadcast this story to the entire galaxy, Du said. Everyone will know the truth about this ship. Everyone will have a choice about how they respond. And when this broadcast is done, I am going to ask the ship to restore power to your fleet so you can go home. I hope you will think about what I have said. I hope you will make a different choice next time. The broadcast went out on every channel in every language to every corner of the galaxy that could receive it. A human voice, speaking simply and clearly, telling the story of an ancient ship and the civilization that created it. When it was done, the ancient vessel restored power to the fleet, just as Du had promised. Commander watched the enormous ship turn away from her disabled fleet and begin to move toward distant stars. Her weapons were working again. She could have ordered her ships to fire. She could have tried one more time to take what she had spent 30 years pursuing. But she did not give the order. Instead, she sat down heavily in her command chair and wondered if a human had just done something that all the weapons in the galaxy could not do. He had changed her mind. Left for dead by the galaxy, the Colossal Starship found a human. Part 5. 6 months had passed since the confrontation with the fleet. In that time, everything had changed. The ancient ship had a name now. People throughout the galaxy called it the Wanderer's Hope. It was a name that Du had suggested, and the ship had accepted it with something that felt like pride. After 800,000 years of being called the derelict, or the artifact, or the threat, it finally had a real name. Du was no longer alone on the ship either. His broadcast had reached every corner of civilized space. People had heard his story, some had laughed, some had called him a fool, but others had listened, others had understood. The first to arrive was a young engineer named Park Min. She had watched Deuce broadcast from a tiny repair station on the edge of human space and had immediately quit her job to find him. She said that anyone who could wake an ancient god with kindness and patience was someone she wanted to work with. Then came one, a doctor who had spent his career treating species that other doctors refused to help. He arrived with medical supplies and a determination to learn how the Wanderer's hope could heal. Then came a teacher who believed that this knowledge should be shared with the galaxy, not hoarded or feared. Then came others, engineers, scientists, artists, diplomats, people from a dozen different species who had heard the story of the lonely ship and the human who befriended it. They came to help. They came to learn. They came because they wanted to be part of something new. The Wanderer's hope was not just a ship anymore. It was becoming a community. Du stood on an observation deck and watched space stream past the viewing windows. The ship was traveling at speeds no other vessel could match, folding space with engines that had been designed before most galactic civilizations existed. They were responding to a distress call from a colony, a plague that was killing thousands and spreading fast. The same who had once studied the ship and abandoned it were now asking for its help. Du smiled at the thought. The universe had a strange sense of humor sometimes. The Wanderer's hope dropped out of folded space above the colony world. Medical shuttles launched within minutes, carrying one and his team of healers along with medicines synthesized by the ship's ancient medical systems. They had designed their ship to preserve life. Its medical knowledge was vast beyond anything the modern galaxy possessed. Du watched the shuttles descend through the planet's atmosphere. He felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to find Min standing beside him. "The cure is working," she said. "The first patients are already recovering. They are calling it a miracle." Du nodded. "It is not a miracle. It is just what the ship was built to do, help people." Min was quiet for a moment. Then she asked the question that Du knew had been on her mind for weeks. "Why did you help it? The ship, I mean. When you were first brought aboard, you could have tried to find the control room. You could have tried to take command of it, use it to get rich or powerful. Why did you repair it instead? Why did you treat it with kindness?" Du thought about the question for a long time. It was a good question. It deserved a real answer. "When I was floating out there," he finally said, "dying in the dark, I had a lot of time to think. I thought about my life, about the things I had done and the things I had not done. And I realized that most of the time when something bad happened to me, it was because someone chose to be cruel when they could have been kind. The pirates who destroyed my ship. The company that refused to send a rescue. The universe does not have to be cruel. People choose to be cruel." He turned to look at Min. "When the ship found me, it could have left me to die. It could have ignored my signal like everyone else did. But it reached out. It opened a door. It gave me a chance to live. So when I got inside and realized how hurt it was, how alone it had been for so long, I thought about all the times people had been cruel to me, and I decided to make a different choice." Min nodded slowly. "You decided to be kind." "Yes," Du said. "I decided to be kind, and the ship responded to that. Not because I was smart or strong or special, but because kindness is rare in this galaxy. When you show kindness to something that has only ever received fear and greed, it means something. It matters." They stood in silence for a while, watching the world turn slowly beneath them. Down there, people who had once abandoned the ship were being saved by it. The same patterns of fear and rejection were being broken, replaced by something better. Later that day, the ship showed Du something it had never shown anyone before. A signal, faint and distant, coming from far beyond the edge of explored space, a signal that used the same encoding patterns as the. Dew stared at the data for a long time. His heart was beating fast. Is this what I think it is? The ship answered him directly, words forming in his mind with the warmth of a close friend. It had learned to communicate with Dew this way over the months, a gentle presence that no longer caused him any pain. I believed I was the last, the ship said. I believed my creators sent only one vessel before they died, but this signal suggests that I may have been wrong. There may be others. There may be more of me. Dew looked at the star charts. The signal came from a region of space so distant that even with the ship's engines, the journey would take years. It was a long way to travel on the chance that the signal was real. But what if it was real? What if there were other ships out there, other survivors of the other ancient vessels that had been wandering alone for hundreds of thousands of years? Dew gathered the crew on the observation deck. He showed them the signal. He explained what it might mean, and then he asked them a simple question. Are you willing to go? The answer was immediate. Yes, every single one of them, yes. Smiled and said that any journey was worth taking if there was a chance to learn something new. One said that if there were other ships out there, they might need help just like this one had. Min just laughed and said she had not quit her old job to take the safe path. Dew looked at his crew, his strange little family of humans and aliens who had come together around an ancient ship and a simple idea. Then he looked up at the ceiling, at the lights that pulsed with patient warmth, at the presence that watched over all of them. Let us go then, he said. Let us find out if you have family out there. The Wanderer's hope turned toward the distant stars. Its ancient engines hummed to life, and space began to fold around it. Dew watched through the viewing windows as the familiar constellations stretched and blurred. Dew, the ship said quietly in his mind. Yes. Are you afraid? He thought about the question. A journey of years into unknown space, searching for something that might not exist, leaving behind everything familiar. A little, he admitted. Are you? The ship was quiet for a moment. When it spoke again, there was something in its voice that Dew had never heard before. Not just hope, not just gratitude, something deeper, something that felt like peace. No, the ship said. I have you, I have the crew, I am not alone anymore. Dew smiled and placed his hand against the warm wall of the observation deck. Neither am I. The Wanderer's hope carried its crew toward the unknown. Behind them, 100 worlds told stories of the ancient ship that had come back to life. They told stories of a human who had woken a sleeping god with nothing but kindness and patience. They told stories of mercy and hope and the strange, stubborn, wonderful species called humanity. The galaxy had left the Wanderer's hope for dead. A human had brought it back to life. And together, they were going to find out what else was waiting in the stars.